Hello folks, we are back. This is part 14 of how to build a neck through bass. This is where we're going to radius the fingerboard. Just to get you caught up, we have a neck that is together. It is carved and rough sanded. Inside, underneath the fingerboard, we have our truss rod and we have our carbon fiber rods that are in there. And it's time to radius this fingerboard. As you can see, it is flat as could be. I like to start with enough extra thickness so that I have something to work with. When you put a radius in a fingerboard, obviously the measurement of material on the sides is going to go down some. So that's just something to be aware of. But you can see here it's clearly flat as a pancake. So we're going to take that over to the edge sander and we're going to rough in the radius. Now there's a lot of different ways to radius a fingerboard. Some people use a jointer, multiple passes, very careful passes over a jointer. I would recommend a helical head cutter if you're going to do that. Otherwise you're going to destroy your fingerboard. Some people some people plug in a CNC and it does it all for them. I use just the machine, and then I'm going to go back over it with some leveling beams. So a lot of different ways to get it done. Let's go over there now. Let me find my goggles. Basically what I'm getting at is there's no right or wrong way to do it. There's just a lot of different ways to do it. This is just how I do it. I had to wash my dust mask last night and it's still drying, so I've got this lovely piece of a purple t-shirt. Let's see, how about here? A little scenic view of the backside of the neighborhood here. If I sound incoherent, I'm running on not enough sleep and not enough coffee. But I'm confident to do this task today. All right, here we go. I'm going to check it. I do this all by feel first. Now, I've just had to develop a touch for this machine over time. Right, we're a little bit on the flat side, so we're going to put a more aggressive arch into this. And I need to clean this belt. All right, I have roughed in my compound radius by hand on the edge sander. Let me see here. I need to get some couple riser. Actually, this will work. We're okay. This stand that I put my phone on only goes so high. I have this cradle for the neck. This sits right there. Now what I'm going to do is put a slight adjustment on this truss rod that's going to mimic the slightest amount of string tension. I want there to be plenty of headroom in the truss rod. Now this is a two-way truss rod, so I could leave it alone and we could start from neutral and be totally fine. Now keep in mind, this video is reversed image. If you're doing this, don't let me get this right, don't tighten your truss rod and then level that out, because what you're doing is essentially putting automatic relief into your surface. It's kind of reverse psychology at this point. I hope that makes sense. If you have questions on any of that stuff, feel free to reach out, private message me. I can walk you through it. With what we're going for as far as the concept and the end goal in sight. All right. That all looks good. Yeah, so what I go for, I have a compound radius that I've roughed in. I want to see a very straight treble side and a bass side that has the slightest, and I mean slightest amount of relief. The reason for that is the larger, fatter bass strings need a little bit more wiggle room to do what they do. So we're going to basically level that shape into this fingerboard. Let me get a leveling beam here. We're going to go to 220 grit sandpaper, which is aggressive enough. It gets some work done, but it's not super harsh that it's going to put a lot of big scratches in the fingerboard. If anything, we want to get the scratches out that the edge sander left behind. Okay. Now there are some very specific things that I'm looking for that it's kind of difficult to explain as I do the work, what I'm feeling for, what I'm looking for. Long and short of it is, I'm trying to true up this compound radius while maintaining a level from start to finish length of the playing surface. And what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up for the fretting surface. This is going to get frets later. So everything you do here determines how well your fret job is going to turn out, thus playability. So it's all one step built upon the work done before it. Okay, everything's looking good. What I do is I measure here and measure here, get my compound there, and then what I'm doing is connecting those points, blending all of that so that the string path has an uninterrupted level surface the entire way up. Okay, we've done our initial contact of 220 grit on the entire playing surface. Now we are going to prep these fret slots. And here's what I use for that. Obviously they've been cut. I use the table saw. This is a fret slotting saw from StewMac, and it has this depth stop on it. You can adjust how high or low it goes. I have this set to a very specific depth that I like to use. It accommodates the tang depth on the frets that I use. So what I'm going to do is run this into each slot and just be sure we have clearance. If I hear the blade cutting at all, that means that we're establishing the depth that it needs. And I should hear just a little bit, just on the very edges. The further up I go, I should hear a little bit more sawing action, more of the teeth involved. That's because the radius gets more archy as we go up towards the nut. Now, if you are interested in learning to build or taking your chances, starting out on your own, building your own instruments, find what radius works for you as a player and build that. And then refine it along the way as you go. You can always reach out and ask me or any other builder, hey, what do you do? What's working for you? You know, most of the guys are going to share that info with you and help you all they can. I sure will. Okay, now we have, I'm going to flip this around, we have our slots sawn to depth, and if you look very closely, there's some little marks left behind from that depth stop, right? It leaves these little lines on the side of each fret slot. So what we're going to do is gently go over what we've worked hard to level and true up, again with 220 grit. I'm going to use the same piece of sandpaper that I put on. I'm just going to clean it off. Pro tip, if you're into the cool hipster jeans that have the slats that look like you were attacked by a grizzly bear and you survived, if you clean off your sandpaper like this, it'll kind of wear those holes in a lot quicker. So you still won't have to pay $400 for designer jeans that someone took a knife to. You can actually earn that style with honest hard work, but this accelerates the process. Back to the video on why we're really here. Okay. I go until those lines are gone. And that's when we're done. Okie dokie. Now, the next step is to graduate down to finer grits over the fingerboard with the leveling beam, doing the same thing. So we finished up on 220. Next I'll go to 320 and then 400 grit. After 400, we're going to wet this fingerboard with water, just a little bit. And what that does is that raises the grain. Why would you want to do that? Well, later on in the build, after frets are in and I get to oiling this base, if we don't raise the grain and then knock that down, you're going to have little whiskers sticking up on the fingerboard as soon as oil hits it, and you don't want that. You want it to be smooth as glass under your fingertips if you ever do touch the fingerboard, right, when you're playing. But you also visually don't want to see those sticking up. So here's 320. Good. And then we're going to go to 400. As I've improved my skill and my touch on the edge sander, I've found that this portion with the leveling beams doesn't take as long. But if I work in something that's very uneven and not level on the edge sander, I have a lot more work to do here. You want to be sure that you vacuum those out thoroughly. You don't want any dust settled down in the bottom of those fret slots. If you do have any spots where you see some, you can use this little pick tool and scrape it out. That looks like the only one that had some. Yeah, we're good. Okay. So we have sanded this down to 400 grit. We're going to wet it now. Raise the grain. With ebony, there's not much. This is nothing like wetting a piece of walnut or mahogany. You know, those two woods, maple, alder, typical stuff that you see in a neck or a body. There's a drastic effect when you do this. Ebony, it's subtle, but it's still necessary. And that's all it takes. Just a little bit on a paper towel and just wet the surface. And we're going to let that sit and dry. And I'm currently out of 600 grit, so I'll use some 800. That will do the job. And we're just going to do this by hand once this dries up. We're watching water dry in real time. This would take a lot longer if it was much more humid. We're at a comfortable 45% humidity today. And that's probably going to drop as the day warms up. Okay. Alright, that's dry. Be sure and dust mask it up when you get to the fine grit like this, because you're spreading much smaller particles of wood dust into the air when you sand finer grit. And that's the stuff that'll really mess you up, is that powder, you know, just microscopic stuff you can't even see. It stays floating in the air for much longer. I'm going to kick a fan on here and blow this all out of the way. Once you can feel all those little whiskers are gone, you're done. And it should be very smooth at this point. That's it. Alright, that's it. 800. This is slick as glass. We're going to vacuum it one more time. Okay, this fingerboard is now ready for frets. And that's going to be another video. So there we are. That was part 14 of how to build a neck through bass. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You may private message me. You may email me, bradymuck@yahoo.com. That's BRADYMUCK @yahoo.com. Happy to help you all I can and share whatever I've learned along the way. All right, we'll see you next one.